My mom has always wanted to go to Europe, and when we gifted her a trip there for Christmas, I told her she could pick out anything she would like to do for travel. Ultimately, we decided on an upper premium cruise line aboard a mid-sized ship, and Oceania was ultimately the line chosen. Despite not knowing very much about this company, we chose their newest ship, the Vista. So are the raving reviews on their food and ships correct? Or is it the opposite, more like an expensive retirement home at sea? Well, let's find out, and let's see if it's worth the money. This is my review of the Oceania Vista. So this trip took a while to plan, as there are many options for sailing the Mediterranean. Oceania was honestly one of the last on my shortlist due to their dated looking legacy ships and not so attractive perception of onboard clientele, at least for someone my age. But when my mom showed me their brand new ship just within our budget, plus all the ports that she wanted to do, as well as the company's largest selling point, which is their finest dining at sea, well, we decided to go for it and book it, even though I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But if you've never heard, or at least don't know much about Oceania, I wouldn't blame you. The company has been completely off my radar, and I only knew they were a small line with a handful of older, small ships. And that is in fact the case. The company was formed in 2002 as a premium brand which was chartering ships from the then recently bankrupt Renaissance Cruises. Ultimately, the company would continue chartering these ships under the name Oceania Cruises, eventually purchasing those vessels and taking delivery of their first purpose-built new-build ships in 2011 and 2012. By 2014, Norwegian Cruise Line would purchase their parent company and bring the Oceania name under their umbrella. The line would continue to put their focus on cuisine and itineraries. They would bring on a celebrity chef while also focusing on having port-heavy itineraries where their ships would stay in longer than other lines. But those older ships, I'm sorry, are just very ugly and very outdated. Most of them weren't even built for the line. They were inherited from a bankrupt one. So with that perception, I've always wondered who on earth chooses to sail on these? But in fairness, this outdated style of ships was about to end with the announcement of their first new build ship since 2012, the Oceania Vista. Two were ordered at this time. The Vista, which completed construction in early 2022 and set sail in April of 2023, while the Allura will set sail in 2025. Both these ships are just slightly larger than the other new-build ships in the fleet at around 67,000 tons, and they have just 1,200 guests on board. Vista is also set to travel the world, offering a wide range of itineraries, as short and regular as a 7-day Caribbean sailing, all the way up to a 197-day cruise, literally around the world. We chose the Mediterranean Navigator, a 10-day voyage which starts in Rome or Civitavecchia, Italy, sailing to Livorno, then La Spezia, crossing borders to dock in Villefranche, France, then to Marseille, which we would then sail west to Barcelona, Spain, then Valencia, Alicante, and Ibiza, Spain, which was a rescheduled port. We would then sail a sea day and finally dock in Valletta, Malta. 10 different ports, 4 different countries, and a total of 1,837 nautical miles to travel. It's an exciting itinerary with a lot to see and do. So let's climb aboard, and we'll start in our cabin. We got a standard veranda stateroom, and upon first impressions, this is a very comfortable room. At 291 square feet, this is the second cheapest room you can get, and for what is essentially an entry-level room type on board, I thought it was very comfortable. The design isn't exactly my taste, but it felt premium with solid materials all around. The entryway has some closet storage on the left, along with a stocked mini fridge with complimentary soft drinks, as well as water glasses, a touch you know I love. There's also 2 provided water canisters which you can take home with you after your cruise. In this area, there's a digital thermostat that can make the room extremely cold or warm if you want to. You can also apparently pair it to your phone and control it anywhere, though I could never get it to work. The bed was very comfortable, probably the most comfortable bed I've had on a cruise ship, with crisp linens and a soft mattress, though I did struggle a little bit with a pillow. On both sides there are tables that have lamps and charge ports that also feature USB-C. There's an okay enough couch and table area, along with a decently sized vanity. The TV is very large and has a decent selection of free on-demand movies, as well as smart features, like the ability to see daily restaurant menus. Basically everything you'd expect the app to do, except Oceania doesn't have an app. The bathroom is really the star of the show in this room. It has a weirdly massive amount of storage, nice tiling throughout, and the largest shower I have seen on a cruise ship. It's absolutely massive. But the room isn't perfect, especially our particular one, room 7106. As soon as you go onto the balcony, you'll notice the severe lack of privacy. The cabin aft of us is a larger penthouse veranda, and it obviously intrudes quite a bit into the privacy of our balcony and room in general. That paired with a significant light pollution from the deck below was pretty annoying. I always like to have the curtains wide open on all ships that we're on, and we just couldn't do that on this one. Our placement in the corridors was also annoying as well. Just beyond our cabin door is the crew staircase. On most ships, they keep these doors closed for as long as possible to avoid noise intrusion. However, this one on our deck was left open basically the entire cruise. There was quite a few times where we could just hear stuff banging around, even early in the morning, causing me to wake up. Besides these problems though, I thought the room was very nice. But the Vista has a bunch of other cabin types. My mom, for example, got a category below ours, a unique French balcony room. It's essentially the exact same room just without a balcony. For my money, I much preferred this room. Though the suites above this ship actually offer some really intriguing and lavish accommodations, top of which is the owner's suite, which of course is spectacularly pretty, though as you can imagine is prohibitively expensive. There are also a few suites below that, like larger penthouse suites and concierge rooms. Now, one of the biggest factors in choosing this cruise line over others, especially for my mom, was the food. Norwegian and Oceania position this brand as having the quote, finest cuisine at sea, a literal trademark phrase that they plaster everywhere. So obviously we went in with pretty high expectations, and I figured given all the hype and the price we paid for this, mostly everything we would get would be a significant step above other cruise food that I've had. So, was it? No, not really. Now food is subjective, and claiming to have the best cuisine at sea is just asking for differing strong opinions like mine. Now there are 9 different places to eat on board. For casual fare, there's Waves Grill and Aquamar Kitchen. Both are outside and offer sit-down bites that are made to order. Aquamar offers breakfast and lunch dishes. Some were good, like the avocado toast with shrimp, and some were not, like these tiny pancakes. Waves Grill, however, had a lot of hits, like these burgers, which were by far the best I've ever had at sea. Likewise is the evening pizza, which takes over the entire restaurant for dinner. The only genuinely bad thing I had here was the lunch shrimp roll. Further aft on Deck 12 is the Terrace Cafe, the ship's main buffet. I thought this was pretty good most of the time. Really, on most days we ate here, both for lunch and dinner, with many options proving to be very good. To be honest, I did think the actual selection was pretty minimal though. This entire area was all the buffet had for selection, and even with it being that small, they still had repeating options mirrored on either side. I would have expected a lot more options given the ship's premium price tag, and I was surprised to see no upscale options like I've seen on other lines, like crab legs or multiple soups like I have on Disney. Again, I would say that around 85% of everything I tried there was really good. What was very premium were the stations where you can make food to order, like the pasta station and the grill. At the latter, you can choose from a small list of items like steak, fish, and even lobster. I ordered a fish of the day there, the mahi-mahi, and it was good, though it wasn't really prepared in any way. It was sort of just grilled fish, and I would have liked there to have been a more clear option if you could have had it prepared in any way, like seasoned at all. Aside from those, there's also baristas, which serve specialty coffees, but also has a bakery section as well as a small hors d'oeuvres area. I thought some of the items from the bakery were very good, while others felt a little dry. Oceania hypes up their croissants, saying they import French butter to make them. They were good, but nothing really special. The hors d'oeuvres area was nice for a very small snack, but that's all it is. What's annoying about all of these casual options are their times. For breakfast, everything closes at 10 a.m. If you want food at the buffet, you can't eat there until 12 p.m., and even then, you only have 2 hours as it closes at 2 p.m. The other casual restaurants between 3 and 4. But between 4 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., when they start reopening for dinner, there's no food anywhere on the ship other than room service and the small hors d'oeuvres area at baristas. Then, after 9 p.m., everything closes, so you can't get any late night food except for room service. There were multiple days where I was hungry and wanted some food between these weird hours, and there just wasn't anything. I especially would have loved pizza after 10 p.m., but again, it was all closed. I guess you could get pizza from room service, but it certainly isn't prepared the same way it is at Waves Grill. But Vista also features a bunch of sit-down options as well, including 4 specialty restaurants: Polo Grill, Red Ginger, Ember, and Toscana, all of which you do need reservations for. Oceania ensures that all guests can try all restaurants once during their voyage. Now, unfortunately, we did miss Red Ginger, the ship's Asian restaurant, due to me not feeling great that day. But we did try everything else. At Toscana, the ship's Italian restaurant, we enjoyed a delicious bread service and fantastic appetizers served on Versace diningware. The mains, however, were a bit of a miss for us. My lasagna was good, but not great, as was my steak, which I didn't really care for the flavor of. My mom's fish also had several bones in it, and Emmy's pasta was about a 3.5 out of 5. Overall, it was a restaurant we would never come back to if we tried it on land. Unfortunately, it pales in comparison to other specialty Italian restaurants I've had, like Palo on Disney Cruise Line. There really is no comparison between the two in food quality. Then came Ember, a restaurant based around American comfort food. It was a similar experience, with really great appetizers, but merely okay mains, with my mom's steak being cooked well, but not very well seasoned, while I didn't even eat half of my shrimp tacos. Though Emmy's lobster mac and cheese was fantastic. Finally, there was Polo Grill, the steakhouse, and the one we've heard the best reviews on. Once again, the appetizers were very good, but our steaks, while being cooked perfectly, were a bit chewy and a little bland. Overall, I wasn't really impressed with the specialty restaurants on board. And even if I did love one enough to go back to it over and over again, as we learned, getting last-minute reservations or walk-ins was extremely hard. We tried a few times, but just never got in. But that's okay, because there's also a main dining room where anyone can come and eat dinner anytime. A quirk of this main dining room is that the menu down here is almost exactly the same to what is being served upstairs on the buffet. I thought that was a little weird, but I figured the food would be at least a bit better prepared, perhaps even cooked to order. And in fairness, they do have a constant list of Oceania favorites that are always on the menu, like the fantastic lobster bisque. However, everything else ranged from okay, like my steak, to very good, like my mom and Emmy's Dover sole. I honestly feel weird for saying this, but honestly the main dining room food was at par or worse than Celebrity's food. I don't know, I guess I just boarded the ship with high expectations. They say it's the best cuisine at sea, everyone raves about it, the voyage is the most expensive trip I've ever taken, so yeah, my expectations were very high. I was anticipating every meal to be premium land restaurant quality, but I found myself more disappointed with the food than I would have liked to have been. Again, Disney's Palo Italian specialty restaurant is much better than anything I had on this ship. So too is the Petite Chef, which we tried on the Celebrity Solstice. Both are upcharge eateries on those ships, but I figured that type of food would be the norm here. To clarify though, Oceania is probably the best food quality that I've had in some cases, but it's not by a massive margin, certainly not worth the extra price margin associated. The ship itself is really great though. Clearly, it is a departure from the rest of the fleet in terms of interior design, and as I'm sure you've noticed, all of the restaurants and public spaces feel modern and tastefully luxurious. A particular highlight for me was the library, which is surprising, but it was beautifully designed and had a lot of interesting options. The lobby, while not serving much of a purpose for activities, was also very nice, and many lounging areas provided very comfortable seating amongst real materials and beautiful art. In fact, all of the art on board was gorgeous, as was the ship's observation lounge called Horizons. It's very large and has unobstructed views over the bow with all sorts of seating. My favorite were these lounge chairs up front, which were extremely comfortable and very cozy. This lounge also has a bar, a stage, and Celebrity, take note, doesn't play blurred lines during the day. Instead, soft classical and spa music fills what I consider to be the perfect observation lounge. It's by far my favorite place on board. They also have a decent afternoon tea service here, with a live string quartet playing in the background. There are also some amenities I have never seen before, areas that are more premium and also cater to an older clientele. Those include the Artist Loft, where passengers can join a resident artist for painting lessons, or the Digital Center, where talks are being held on things like photography and social media posting. There's also a beautiful smoking lounge, which I obviously never used. Likewise, a culinary center, where you can make your own food in a kitchen with a chef. It's a very cool experience, though one that costs $50 a person. Out on deck, there isn't a whole lot. There's a single pool with 2 hot tubs, albeit nice ones with integrated day beds that we took advantage of a few times. There's also an outdoor screen that's constantly showing the ship's position and course, which I do love, though at night it is extremely bright. The whole outdoor deck is actually very comfortable, with plenty of soft deck chairs and several nooks that really break up the space. On the upper decks, there's also some sports, like a jogging track, a pickleball court, and a putting course. It's pretty good overall, but Deck 15 aft feels a bit Spartan, and they probably could have added another whirlpool or two. Really, the ship is pretty small, and I did find myself getting a little bored sometimes when the chilly Mediterranean air didn't allow us to use the single outdoor pool. Because the ship doesn't feature an indoor pool or any enclosed roof area, we were a bit out of luck for swimming. I also found that within the public spaces below Deck 12, there weren't many out-facing views. There is no promenade deck, and all the bars and lounges below had no clear ocean views. It just seems that at this price point, and being a brand new ship, it lacks a lot of features that competitors seem to have, but I'll talk more about that later. As for entertainment, well, it was a bit of a hit or miss. Smaller acts like the band found in Horizons were fantastic. And when they weren't playing, you can request a song through an iPad up on stage. I love that. There's also a nightly pianist playing on a beautiful Steinway at Martini's Lounge. They also have a guest speaker on board, a professor to talk about the history of some of the locations we'd be visiting. We sat in on one lecture he did on the Knights of Malta, and it was really interesting, as he was a great speaker. I only wish they had more than 2 of these talks for our 10-day cruise. The Vista Lounge is the ship's main theater, and each night a performance would be held within it. We watched a comedian who was good, and another pretty run-of-the-mill variety act show, which was pretty uninspired. If it were a food, it would be unseasoned chicken. But that wasn't the case for what we saw the next night. We just happened to be within the theater when they began the performance of Whitney Houston Everlasting. This show was so weird. Okay, so the ship's activity guide describes this show as, quote, cutting-edge LED technology delivers a night unlike anything you've ever seen. It only became more intriguing when the cruise director prefaced the show by saying it was the 3rd time it had ever been shown on Oceania, adding that it wasn't meant to replace real performers, that the Whitney Houston estate was okay with this, and that it was very experimental. Obviously this was very weird, but the actual show was bizarre. Basically, it was a screen showing a deepfake version of the deceased artist singing and dancing. On either side of the stage was a whole band, which you couldn't hear at all, along with 2 backup singers, which you also could barely hear. So basically, everyone was watching a large screen with an uncanny, sort of disturbing AI face of Whitney Houston on a real dancing body, and the whole audience was supposed to treat it like a real concert. It was very bad, and during the show, I was trying to track down what this actually was. It turns out that it was originally designed as a hologram show by a company called Base Hologram for Harrah's in Las Vegas. The show was called An Evening with Whitney Houston, and a writer for The Guardian called the Las Vegas show a ghoulish cash-in. It only lasted in Vegas for 8 months, and now it seems like they're licensing the show out to Oceania for testing. The whole thing was pretty bad, but also a little disturbing and a tad bit disrespectful for someone who is no longer alive to consent to this. While I was sitting there, I sort of just had an out-of-body experience, very self-aware of what was happening. I was in this theater with a bunch of old people watching a deep-fake singer who was dead. It was a little dystopian, honestly. Anyways, other than this, activities were pretty sparse. Only a handful of meaningful activities would be held per day, and they're all the usual cruise suspects like trivia and music. Nothing really out of the ordinary or revolutionary. But this is still an upscale experience on an upscale cruise line, so there are some advantages apart from a luxe ship and good food. Perhaps my favorite perk on the Vista is the size. This would be considered a medium-sized cruise ship, and since there are only 1,200 people on board, it's never that busy. Along with that premium category, included with your cruise fare is unlimited beer and wine during lunch and dinner, Wi-Fi, soft beverages including smoothies and fresh juices, plus a credit for shore excursions. Now, many of those perks were just introduced in 2023 as a bundled package. They used to charge for all of them, and despite moving towards being an all-inclusive line, there are definitely still aspects of this cruise that are just sort of annoying given how much all of this costs. Stuff like that Wi-Fi package. It's powered by Starlink, and the speeds are really good for the basic free package. But I had 2 videos coming out while I was at sea, and I needed to release them. To do that, I needed to go to the YouTube Studio app, which they had blocked. In fact, all streaming sites, along with other important apps like Apple Mail, are blocked. And even though the Studio app doesn't stream video, I needed to upgrade my internet package to access it. It was $100 for 10 days, and not only was I limited to 2 devices per room, but the speeds were exactly the same as the basic package. There's also other things that I just don't understand why are on the ship. Like, why is a casino on board? Everyone is paying a fortune to be here, but they're still offering ways to take your money. It's just a waste of space, and it felt very off the entire cruise. There was also a lot more advertising for onboard paid events that I would have expected for a cruise at this price caliber. Each night, we received promotions and other advertisements in our room. I was also surprised to see that there are other different private lounges for certain higher room categories. Not only is there a concierge lounge, but there's also an executive lounge. Like, what's the point of that? They're tiny and barely have anything in them. Perhaps the most annoying thing for us, though, was the spa and its outdoor terrace. It looks really nice, but we didn't have access to it. Only guests staying in concierge cabins and above can get in and use it. That's ridiculous to me, as every other upper premium cruise line I know of grants all guests access to their spas. It was just the constant partitioning of spaces on board that always felt like you needed to pay more to get and do stuff. And again, for how much you pay to be on here, and when you look at competitors, I don't get it. This feels like a very old way of doing things, despite this being a brand new ship. So let's talk about that price. For our 10-day Mediterranean voyage in the second lowest category room, I paid $11,998 Canadian for 2 people. That works out to be around $8,700 USD, or around $4,300 USD per person. That's actually quite a bit more than what I remember paying. That's a lot of money, and that's just for the lowest category room. For the lowest concierge cabin, which is about the same size as our standard veranda, it would be around $4,700 per person, while the lowest tier suites come in at around $6,300 per person. The big owner's suite, as you've guessed, is the most eye-watering at $14,000 per person. Though honestly, for comparables like Celebrity or even Disney, this top suite is quite a bit cheaper. In fact, it's half the price on this 8-night Celebrity cruise in their highest category. And I don't even know what to say about this Disney suite pricing on this 12-night Mediterranean cruise. It's presented without comment. But if you do want to try out the Vista in the cheapest way possible, there are round-trip sailings out of Miami that are as low as $2,700 per person, especially if you compare it to a comparable Holland America ship, which is almost definitely not as great of an experience and only around $500 less. I would much rather sail the Vista than this. However, the value proposition falls apart for me when I look at Oceania's direct competitors and what they offer. Take Explora Journeys, MSC's new entry into the luxury market. In fact, some might even argue that Explora Journeys is an entire market category above Oceania. Their ships, in my eyes, are better in every single way compared to Oceania. And it starts with their larger base cabins at 377 square feet, rather than ours at 291. You also get all drinks included, plus a welcome bottle of champagne, as well as pretty much everything else included. Importantly though, that's except shore excursions. The ship itself, though, has 300 less passengers than the Vista. It has 4 different pools, including one that's indoor and one that has a stern infinity edge. There's also 5 different hot tubs, 4 of which are also infinity edged, plus a bunch of fine eateries too. All of this looks pretty appealing, but it becomes a genuinely great option when you find out that there's also a 10-day Mediterranean voyage that is $800 less expensive than what I paid on the Vista. Viking 2 is a great option that has excellent ocean ships that offer more amenities that I care about, like more pools, an open spa, no casino, and many other inclusions. They're a little more pricey in some equivalent Mediterranean voyages, around $5,100 USD per person, though I have seen it cheaper before by keeping an eye on their ever-revolving special offers. The point is, Oceania has a lot of competition, and for someone like me who cares a lot about the ship experience, I see a value proposition battle going on in this space. But let's take a final breakdown and give the Oceania Vista a Jake's isn't any good score. It's out of 5 categories, each out of 10, for a possible perfect score of 50 out of 50. We'll start with the staterooms. From a design perspective, I thought the room was very solid, especially the bathroom and shower. However, there are a few quirks that I didn't like, from the lack of storage to the fact that the AC blows directly onto the seating area, making it uncomfortable to eat there. Otherwise, it's among the best I've ever stayed in, and removing the negative bias from our particular room placement, it's an 8 out of 10. Food was also strong. Was it the finest cuisine at sea? Not for us, but it was consistently solid, and it gets an 8 out of 10. The ship itself is a little tough. In a vacuum, it's pretty great. It's well designed from an interior perspective, and save for a few guest flow quirks like the aft elevators not going all the way down to deck 5, it's pretty solid. However, I think it lacks in some key amenities, and I did find myself getting bored with their offerings, especially compared to competitors. So I'll give it a 7 out of 10. The overall experience was good. We reached a number of fantastic ports, and Oceania always arranged a shuttle that takes you right to the heart of wherever we're docked. The crew were friendly, attentive, and accommodating, though entertainment was a bit of a hit or miss. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Finally, there's value. I debated on this category for a while, and I ultimately came to a 6 out of 10. For nearly $12,000 of my money, I was expecting a bit more, and that's especially true when I compare it to key aspects of our experience with competitors, which seem to do it better or just as well as Oceania. That gives the Vista an overall score of 36 out of 50. That puts it just behind the Disney Fantasy and just ahead of the Celebrity Solstice. Both are premium ships that are priced much less than Oceania. In the end, I really enjoyed my trip aboard the Vista. We got to experience a number of incredible locations in an objectively very comfortable way. I also got to travel to Europe with my mom, which has been a dream of hers her whole life. So this trip will always be special for me. Will I ever travel on Oceania again? Probably not. The majority of passengers aboard were 50 years older than us, and I counted just 5 other people that looked like they were under 30, 2 of which I know were family members of a ship officer. So the experience is obviously not catering to me. Regardless, I think Norwegian still needs to bring in more inclusions and make their current and future ships a lot more competitive and interesting for a rapidly competitive premium cruise market. Because let's be honest, their elderly clients will not always be around to stay loyal for what they have now. And I do wonder how a younger generation will react to Oceania in general. Thanks for joining me in this review, and if you want to keep up with my travels and follow along with stuff that I might not mention here, follow me on Instagram @BrightSunTravels. I posted a lot about this trip on my stories, so you should follow me and stay tuned for whatever I have coming next. My name is Jake, and thank you very much for watching.